What do you think the most striking part of her young personality was to you?
Her confidence. Her confidence in who she was. She could bring light to any situation. She was just full of beauty.
She was just like, oh, I'm unstoppable.
She stood out. Cheerful, caring, down for adventures.
She had hopes and dreams and aspirations for her life, that there was a big future ahead for her.
I was getting ready to go into work. Someone texted me, call the police, Nikki's gone.
In the first week, I figured she was just hanging out somewhere, lost her phone or something.
We start making flyers and putting up flyers. I just knew that she was being held against her will or worse.
One of the first clues in this case came from 17-year-old Nikki Kuhnhausen herself. When investigators discovered messages on Snapchat, a social media platform, about someone she had met that night, a man named David Bogdanov.
All right. This is Detective David Jensen with Vancouver Police, and I have with me David Bogdanov. Do I have your consent to record this conversation?
Yep. I saw her walking. I walked up to her, asked her why is she walking alone in the middle of the night, and she said that she had some big fight with her boyfriend, and she's really upset, and I was just trying to be a nice guy,
Yeah.
you know.
So you're the last person to ever see her. After she left with you, no one ever saw her again.
I don't know what I can tell you.
David is kind. David is caring.
David made everyone laugh. He was everyone's friend.
Yeah, I try to keep my hopes high, but after 6 months, it's a little hard for that.
When you heard that her remains were found, what was your initial reaction?
It was devastating.
Stand up for me, please.
Investigators say David Bogdanov killed 17-year-old Nikki Kuhnhausen.
As her suspected killer, David Bogdanov made his first court appearance.
By the time we got to trial, now we had 3 different versions of what happened.
Mr. Bogdanov will testify to what happened that night.
The whole time I was just yelling for her to stop.
He was lying and he was full of anger.
She's trying to fight me and just reaching back and scratching at my face.
He had no regard for her life at all.
There's a struggle going on here.
Trying to gouge my eyes.
There's a life or death struggle going on.
His actions and his words show that he intended to kill Nikki, and he intended to kill her because of who she was, a transgender young woman.
This is a narrative and a story that plays out all the time. When trans people go missing, they're usually found deceased.
Lisa Woods will never forget the day her life changed forever. It was June 6, 2019. That's when her daughter, Nikki Kuhnhausen, seemingly vanished. Lisa says they talked daily before work.
I would call her every day and talk to her before my shift. She stopped answering.
Immediately, her mother's intuition kicked in. Lisa had a bad feeling.
That first day, I took her sweatshirt and I made it into a pillowcase, and I slept with her picture and my Bible.
Did you fear that something had happened?
I knew something had happened.
Lisa filed a missing persons report. At first, friend Ariel Fox wasn't too concerned.
Lost her phone or something. Classic Nikki move.
Ariel knew all about Nikki's moves. After all, they'd been best friends since childhood.
She's like the lively friend that's just always high energy. When I first met Nikki, she was still going by Nick, but she was definitely still Nikki at heart.
We lived across the street from each other, I want to say 3rd and 4th grade.
Taylor Watts was a childhood friend as well.
She stood out, you know? She was like cheerful, was caring. She was just Nikki.
Becoming Nikki would be something of an evolution. But Lisa says she and her large family always knew.
Very rarely did anybody call her Nicholas.
Nikki began life as Nicholas. But from a young age, Lisa says Nikki had a strong sense of self.
There's this one picture with a blonde wig on because the babysitter was a hairdresser and she snuck into her wigs.
So she always knew who she was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She broke her arm and she had a pink cast. Her brothers were so mad that I let her get a pink cast. I'm like, she picked the color, it's her broken arm.
It was around 6th grade that Nikki made her gender identity public.
She decided that she was going to be Nikki all the time, not just at home. So she started dressing as herself.
As a woman, young woman?
As a young woman.
Lisa says Nikki was widely accepted for who she was, especially among a certain in crowd.
The cheerleaders loved the way that she did her makeup, and they wanted her to do their makeup as well.
And she hoped that passion would one day turn into her dream job.
She wanted to be Nicki Minaj's hair and makeup artist.
So that was her goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like most teens, Nikki loved to post online.
One day she came home and told me, Mom, I'm Facebook famous.
Especially tributes to her idol, that other Nikki.
What's your name? My name Nick. Where you from? New York and this.
How important do you think social media was to Nikki?
It was pretty important. She loved taking selfies. She loved how many likes she got.
Lisa says Nikki also liked fighting for the underdog.
I was called to the school on many occasions because she had been suspended for hitting someone, but it was always a situation where she was defending someone else.
Nikki's parents had divorced when she was young. Mother and daughter remained close as Nikki became a teen.
We would go get our nails done. We would just drive around and go by the water and walk by the water.
But in high school, things would begin to change.
Nikki was going to school, but she wouldn't make it all the time, and she'd be hard to get a hold of sometimes. She just wouldn't wake up. She'd miss the bus.
Lisa says she knew what was wrong. Nikki had started abusing drugs.
She said to me, Mommy, I don't think I can do my homework without being high. And she was 16.
Friends say Nikki had started using methamphetamine.
That's when I realized I was talking to an addict instead of my daughter.
Lisa says there were many attempts to get Nikki into rehab to help her kick drugs for good, but nothing seemed to stick. For months, Nikki continued to struggle. Just how dangerous Nikki's addiction was became apparent to Lisa in 2018.
I got a call at work from a detective.
Lisa was told Nikki had been shot 6 times. Lisa raced to the hospital, expecting the worst. But when she arrived,
she's so excited.
2 of her girlfriends were there, and she had her makeup all done, and she was sitting up laughing, and they were doing selfies, and I looked at the detective, and I'm like, I thought you said she was shot 6 times.
It was a miracle, says Lisa. None of Nikki's injuries were life-threatening.
It missed every major artery in her neck, in her thigh, twice in the stomach, in her leg, and the back of her calf.
Lisa says Nikki told her she was shot during a dispute over drugs.
What do you think it says about Nikki? She was able to survive being shot 6 times.
She was a tough cookie.
Yeah. Very tough.
The man responsible for Nikki's shooting was never apprehended. Lisa hoped Nikki's brush with death would serve as the inspiration for Nikki to turn her life around.
And did you think, okay, we're on a different path now?
I did. I mean, she knew it was a miracle. She knew.
Now, a year later, Nikki was missing, and Lisa was hoping for another miracle.
The mother of a missing Vancouver teenager not giving up hope that her child will be found safe.
In June 2019, Lisa Woods had just one goal: finding her daughter, Nikki Kuhnhausen. All of Nikki's social media accounts had gone silent.
We start making flyers.
I remember there were flyers everywhere.
Clark County prosecutor Kristen Arnault.
You couldn't go to the grocery store without seeing that flyer.
News of Nikki's disappearance in Vancouver, Washington started to get more attention.
She vanished more than 2 weeks ago and today was listed on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children website.
Police talked to Nikki's roommates and learned the last time they'd seen her was the day she vanished. Nikki was heading out the door to meet a man she'd met just hours before. But who was he? Clark County prosecutor Colin Hayes says her social media messages provided investigators with their first clue about who Nikki was seeing that night.
We have their Snapchat messages, so we know that he picked her up. It would have been somewhere 5 a.m.-ish or so.
He doesn't want to pick up the crumbs.
He was this man, 25-year-old David Bogdanov, who worked at his family-owned construction business. Their exchanges gave police their first glimpse of a timeline when he and Nikki met.
That was the last time she was seen alive by anyone else. So detectives were looking to talk to him within a couple weeks of Nikki going missing.
The investigators tried his home.
They left cards. I think they also tried calling him, weren't able to get a hold of him. They also sent Snapchat messages.
But Bogdanov did not reply. It seemed he had vanished, just like Nikki. Weeks grew into months without any leads.
I just knew that she was being held against her will, or worse.
In late September, nearly 4 months after Nikki went missing, investigators finally heard from David Bogdanov. He said he had had phone problems and had just gotten their messages. Detectives asked him to come in for questioning, hoping he could help the investigation.
Until you talk to him and get the story, you don't necessarily know if maybe there was someone else after that may have seen her.
So on October 2nd, Bogdanov voluntarily met with Detective David Jensen of the Vancouver Police Department.
David, were you aware that this is recording?
Yep.
In their recorded interview, Bogdanov told Jensen he was out drinking with his brothers on June 6th when he noticed a young woman. It was on this Vancouver block around 3 a.m. that David Bogdanov claims he first spotted Nikki alone. He says he walked over to her to check to see if she was okay. They started talking.
I offered her my jacket because it was really cold outside.
Bogdanov also offered Nikki a drink.
I said, do you want some vodka? Because I got some if you want to have a drink just to relax a little bit. And she said, sure. So I just gave her that bottle to take with her.
He also gave Nikki his contact information.
I did give her my Snapchat name. I wanted to just exchange Snapchats, and she didn't have a phone with her.
Bogdanov says he and Nikki then parted ways. A few hours later, Nikki sent him the address where she was staying with friends. Bogdanov drove over and picked her up.
He said he was going to help her find her phone because her phone was missing.
Later that morning, Bogdanov says he and Nikki found themselves alone in his car.
Kind of just parked there in the driveway, chit-chatting a little bit, and then she told me that she's not a she.
Bogdanov says that's when Nikki revealed she was transgender.
I was shocked to find that out and just uncomfortable and really, really disturbed. And I asked her to please get out of the car because this is just really weird for me. She just got out of the car and I took off.
He's pretty vague about the details at that point and just says that was the last I saw of her.
While he was uncertain about some details of that night, Arnaud says Bogdanov was clear on one topic.
He went out of his way to make sure that they knew that he found that anyone who was part of the LGBTQI community, that he found them disgusting.
LGBTQI is an abbreviation to refer to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people and communities.
For me, it's even disturbing when I'm around a gay person or somebody bi or transsexual or something, you know. So I just got disgusted and I asked her to just get out.
Bogdanov offered up another piece of information, though he was never asked.
I wish I could help you more, but I don't know. I'm not a kind of person I'm not even a violent person, you know, at all, nothing.
Bogdanov's interview ended and he left the police station. Then, on December 7th, 2019, 6 months after Nikki vanished, a man walking on nearby Larch Mountain found something that would change this case forever.
Nobody goes about their day expecting that they're going to find a body.
I had made her a Christmas card that morning because I had hoped that she was coming home.
It was nearly Christmas 2019, and Lisa Woods was aching for one miraculous gift: the safe return of her 17-year-old daughter, Nikki Kuhnhausen. She'd been missing for 6 unbearable months.
And I prayed to bring my baby home, just bring my baby home to me.
But the unsettling discovery of a human skull on December 7th, 2019, brought a swarm of local authorities to thickly wooded Larch Mountain, including Detective Joe Swenson from the Clark County Sheriff's Office.
This was the trail that we actually entered into the area, and there were items found immediately inside the tree line.
Underneath the dense canopy of trees, the remnants of a human life had been scattered by animals down a steep ravine.
There were a bunch of clothing items found down there, specifically like a green jacket, some underwear. There was a bandana. There were more bones, jewelry.
You also found a phone cord.
Correct.
What's the significance of that?
When we found the phone charging cord, it was tied in a knot, but it was in a circle, about 4 inches in diameter.
Tangled inside the knotted cord were artificial, multicolored hair extensions.
So looking at the cord in conjunction with the hair, it seemed pretty obvious that if it were placed around somebody's neck, that's how the hair would have gotten caught up in it.
After combing the rugged terrain for 2 days, detectives suspected someone had been murdered.
You know, we had a couple of missing persons cases that were kind of on our mind. We started talking with more detectives and other agencies and learning, hey, this could be Nikki Kuhnhausen. And oh, come to find out, she's been missing for 6 months.
That's when the Vancouver police began another exhaustive search, says Swenson, comparing evidence photos taken on the mountain to Nikki's personal photos found online, looking for matches.
And actually found a lot of images of her wearing the exact items that we had found up here. And so it was a good confirmation initially to be able to say, yeah, we're pretty sure this is Nikki.
About a week later, dental records verified the victim's identity. It was Nikki Kuhnhausen, and it was murder. The medical examiner determined that Nikki had been strangled to death with that cell phone charger cord.
Sorry for interrupting your commute this morning.
December 17th, 2019, Vancouver police detective David Jensen once again questioned the last known person to see Nikki alive, David Bogdanov.
It sounded like you said that you were going to go to your job site.
Basically, I went to work.
Yeah, you went to work.
Bogdanov stuck to his story. On the morning of June 6th, after Nikki divulged she was transgender, he said he was shocked and disturbed.
And that's when you're like, I'm not.
Basically kicked her out of
I'm
the
not
van.
into this, and kicked her out of the van, sent her on her way.
Bogdanov said he then drove straight to work in nearby Portland, Oregon.
So at the time that we talked, I didn't have the benefit of all of your phone records, okay? But now there's been some initial analysis done. So your phone left and then went east, out past Larch Mountain. What happened on that trip?
His cell phone record suggested he had never driven to work that morning, but actually traveled in the opposite direction to Larch Mountain.
That trip took about an hour round trip, up some logging roads, and then back again.
I think I want to talk with the lawyer.
Okay. All right. So you're being arrested today for the murder of Nikki Kuhnhausen, whose remains have been discovered, who was strangled to death. Okay. Stand up for me, please.
A few hours later, Detective David Jensen told Lisa they had found Nikki.
And I fell on my knees and started screaming, and he came in and held me until I could gain my composure. After I calmed down, Dave told me, I want you to know that I arrested David this morning. I wanted to make sure he was charged and behind bars before I came and told you.
Charges were murder in the second degree and malicious harassment, which is now called hate crime in Washington.
What were your first reactions when you heard he had been arrested?
I mean, truthfully, I was pretty surprised.
Clinical social worker Devin Davis Williamson and Lyndon Walls are transgender activists. They launched the Justice for Nikki Task Force.
Most of the time in our culture, in our country, if a trans person is killed, there is not an arrest made. We think it's right around 30% of trans people who are murdered have someone arrested and fully prosecuted.
Having someone held accountable, I think only that can start the healing. And also bring attention to some of the things that the trans community is burdened with.
Part of their burden, says Lyndon, is living with fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being attacked. A recent UCLA Law School study concluded that transgender people are 4 times more likely than non-transgender people to become victims of violent crime. An explosion of hate the American Medical Association has called an epidemic of violence.
A transgender woman was found shot and killed over the weekend.
We need this to stop.
There was a vigil for her. It was really overwhelming to see how much love that the trans community had come together for my daughter. And that's where I met Devin. She helped me find focus and purpose. She told me that she was going to make sure that nobody forgot Nikki's name and that it was going to make a difference.
With help from her new friends, Lisa's focus slowly shifted from the horror of facing her daughter's violent death to the hope of finding justice for her murder.
Lisa was so driven to see justice and to do right for her child.
And I think that's given Lisa purpose and drive to stay alive.
She was a rainbow of light. She was so confident in who she was.
At a press conference just days after Bogdanov's arrest, Lisa Woods became an activist.
I believe this man, I believe he killed her because she was a transgender. I believe that with all my heart.
By August 2021, David Bogdanov's day of reckoning was fast approaching. His murder trial was just 2 weeks away when prosecutors learned he had changed his story dramatically.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony.
And he would take the stand to tell it himself.
She's jumping from my gun, and all I can think is, oh my God, I'm gonna get shot right now.
Always there for everyone, no matter what.
Vicky Matsuk, David Bogdanov's niece, does not believe her uncle is capable of the murder he's accused of committing.
He would always get along with everyone.
Just days before the trial, he reassured his sister Lily.
I just remember him telling us not to worry. He was ready to just face whatever is coming.
And Lisa was also ready.
I just prayed. I prayed for God to have his hands in it.
The red light is the microphone.
The court supplied a Zoom feed as the trial got underway in August 2021. Each day, family and friends rallied around Lisa, wearing pink masks to court.
Please have a seat.
I think sitting in a room with the man that murdered your kid is hard, impossibly hard.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please give your attention.
Opening statements began with a bold claim from the defense.
Our client did not strangle Nikki Kuhnhausen, causing her death because she's transgendered. Nikki Kuhnhausen is now deceased because Mr. Bogdanov had to defend himself against her attacking him and possibly killing him.
But the prosecution argued that was not the case.
The defendant murdered Nikki after finding out she was transgender.
They insisted Nikki was the victim of a hate crime.
The defendant murdered Nikki because his respect for human life was outweighed by his hatred for those who are gay and those who are transgender.
The prosecution laid out its case, with experts testifying about those Snapchat exchanges leading up to the murder, and cell phone records placing Bogdanov's phone at Larch Mountain just hours later. Jurors were shown evidence found at the scene, including that phone charging cord. The defense called just one witness.
The defense calls David Bogdanov.
Bogdanov himself. Attorney Aaron McAleer questioned Bogdanov about his religious upbringing and his views about LGBTQI people.
Yeah, I was taught that it is a sin and it's not okay.
It's not David's lifestyle, but if David comes across anybody, whoever it is, there's no hate.
Bogdanov told the jury what happened when he and Nikki were alone in his car.
And what was Nikki doing at that point?
She was smoking something out of a pipe.
Bogdanov said Nikki asked him to join her in the back seat. Before he did, he said he wedged the gun he carried between the driver's seat and center console.
That transitioned into us making out.
Is there touching or anything else?
Yes.
Okay. Who was touching who?
It was a little bit of both. At first,
Where was she touching you?
her. She started touching me in my private area.
Bogdanov said the sexual encounter escalated quickly. And that's when he realized Nikki was transgender. Bogdanov's testimony may be disturbing to some viewers.
I was in shock. I just been deceived. I freak out and I push her back and just start freaking out, saying, "You didn't tell me you're a dude," and started yelling at her to said she's a disgusting piece of crap.
He said he told Nikki to get out of his car, and he said she reacted with violence.
She kind of picked up her foot and tried to just kick me with her foot from the passenger side. And she just jumps up and goes towards the center console, towards my gun. I'm thinking, you know, I just was deceived by this person, and this person's high on meth, and all I can think is, oh my God, I'm gonna get shot right now.
The suggestion that Nikki might have gone for the gun kind of defies logic.
Bogdanov said he tried to restrain Nikki by grabbing her jacket, but the material was too slippery to get a good grip. He claims in a desperate attempt to save himself, he reached for a cell phone charging cord.
I grabbed that cable and put it around her and pull her back like that and hold her from keep going forward with the gun.
Bogdanov said he placed the phone cord around Nikki's arms and chest during their struggle, but as he pulled, the cord slipped up to her neck.
The whole time she's trying to fight me and just reaching back and scratching at my face, trying to gouge my eyes.
So, at some point, does she stop struggling?
Yes.
The ligature that was used to kill Nikki was a phone cord that was tied to a space of 3.97 inches, which ends up being about like this. And if you can imagine the physical sensation of having your throat constricted to a space this size, and then have it triple knotted.
After realizing Nikki was dead, Bogdanov said he panicked.
First thing I think is I need to call the police. And then I think that they're not gonna believe me. You know, I've been up all night, not sober. There's drugs in the car. There's a dead person in the back seat. At that point, I thought I need to get rid of the body. This was a very humiliating thing that happened to me. Just wanted to put this behind me, like wishing it never happened.
Bogdanov said that's when he drove Nikki's body to Larch Mountain.
I pulled her out of the car, and there was that spot by the road, but the hill just went down really steep. I just kind of pushed her down that.
Then,
Can you tell the jury why you left the country?
Bogdanov told the court he left the country just hours after killing Nikki, buying a last-minute ticket to Ukraine.
I was scared, emotional wreck. I was thinking I need to quit my drinking, and that I likely would not have been in this situation if I hadn't been drinking, and just wanted to get away.
The fact that he had multiple different stories, that he had had at least 2 opportunities to give this explanation to detectives and hadn't, the fact that he dumped the body, the fact that he ran from the country, all things kind of point to a guilty conscience and not someone who thinks that their actions are justified.
Good afternoon.
Both sides made their case one last time during closing arguments.
His motivations his entire time have been about his hate, his rage, and his shame for finding out that Nikki was transgender. It's not about fear. This case is not about self-defense.
I want to start by saying
Defense attorney Matthew Hoff strongly disagreed.
Nikki Kuhnhausen is not here today, not because she was transgender, but because Mr. Bogdanov was put in a life and death situation.
She just loved the camera, you know?
Seemed like the camera liked her back.
Nikki was just Nikki. She kind of led the way. I just followed.
She was very empowered and very steadfast in her identity, and I think very strong, probably in a way that society struggles to handle.
After 2 weeks of an emotional trial and more than 2 years after Nikki Kuhnhausen's death, would jurors believe David Bogdanov's claim of self-defense?
David is not the person that they made him out to be. David is kind. David is caring.
Or the prosecution's case that he murdered Nikki after he learned she was transgender.
She was so strong in her identity, and that's ultimately why she was killed.
The jury deliberated for more than 2 days.
We weren't sure how it was going to go. There was possibility of a hung jury.
Finally, on day 3, they informed the judge they had reached a unanimous decision.
We, the jury, find the above-named defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the second degree as charged in count 1. Verdict form count 2. We, the jury, find the above-named defendant guilty of the crime of malicious harassment.
A hate crime in Washington.
It's a win. It's a really big win.
I'm just happy to get justice for Nikki's family.
2 weeks later, Lisa would ask the judge to impose the maximum sentence.
Or see her smile, watch her graduate, see her married, or watch her parents.
I wanted to show how Nikki could have been, and so many things that were stolen from us. So many milestones that she'll never get to do. And I miss her every day.
Before handing down the sentence, Judge David Gregerson addressed the court, saying he was, quote, struck by the darker nature of this crime.
It conjures up old childhood legends of the boogeyman, of trust gone terribly wrong.
Fighting back tears, the judge continued for almost 15 minutes.
And the movement towards something resembling justice may be seen as a step in the greater overall movement from darkness toward light. In this court's view, that can and should be Nikki Kuhnhausen's legacy.
Bogdanov was sentenced to the maximum, 19.5 years for Nikki's murder, with 12 concurrent months for the malicious harassment charge.
I think it was appropriate in this case.
It doesn't necessarily seem like a long amount of time when you think about what he took from Nikki and Nikki's family.
After sentencing, family, friends, and supporters gathered outside the courtroom.
She was just a baby. She was just a teenager. He took her life, and, you know, he got the maximum, and that's what he deserves.
Nikki's story has allowed us to take a giant leap forward.
Lisa and Nikki's supporters have tried to find a way for her legacy to help and protect others.
Finding a way to memorialize Nikki and empower other trans teenagers to pursue their dreams, I think is the next step.
I want to thank Nikki's family.
And that happened with the passing of legislation in Washington state known as Nikki's Law.
I'm happy to sign this bill.
It's designed to prevent defendants charged with violent crimes from relying on a victim's gender identity or sexual orientation, the so-called gay or trans panic defense.
Nikki's Law makes it impossible to use what's called the trans panic defense in court, where someone says that they were so out of control when they found out that someone was trans that you essentially aren't culpable for your actions.
Washington is one of 16 states to pass similar legislation. Nikki's supporters hope her law will inspire even more states to follow suit.
What's it like to know that your daughter's legacy, there's a law named after her?
I'm glad it will help other people. I want her death to mean something to someone who may contemplate hurting another transgender person.
Devin and Lyndon are proud of what they achieved with the Justice for Nikki Task Force and hope Nikki's story will help the transgender community.
My hope is that this work has created a domino effect, and this will hopefully lead to other trans kids and teens having a different life outcome.
As Lisa moves forward without Nikki, she carries a special reminder of her daughter, a necklace she wears every day.
I just got this for my birthday from my son Alex, and he made it to put Nikki's ashes in.
You always have Nikki close to your heart?
Yes.
How do you want Nikki remembered?
For her loyalty to what she believed in, staying true to who she was. Just staying true to her family and friends no matter what. Unconditional love for everyone.
"48 hours to miss it would be a crime."
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
The story begins with an American couple, Dr. Larry Rudolph and his wife, Bianca. Larry Rudolph is a well-known dentist in the Pittsburgh area. Larry and Bianca got married after he graduated from dental school, and they were both avid hunters. They traveled several times a year internationally.
Lawrence and Bianca Rudolph traveled from the US here to Zambia in 2016, heading to a safari hunting trip. No one would have imagined Bianca would never make it home and that their journey would end years later with allegations of cover-ups, infidelity, fraud, and murder.
On the morning of October 11, 2016, Lawrence Rudolph and his wife, Bianca, were preparing to return to the United States, and just after 5 o'clock in the morning, Lawrence was in the bathroom when he heard a shotgun, and his wife screamed and came out to find her on the floor, as he says, with a shotgun blast that killed her almost instantly.
Larry Rudolph told police that his wife, Bianca, was packing up, and she was trying to put the shotgun into the soft shell case. That's when he said he heard that gunshot. The Zambian officials did rule that it was an accident. They said that it appeared that it was an accidental discharge from the weapon.
Once the hunting trip was ended, the weapon should have been rendered safe. It boggles the mind that two experienced hunters for this to have been an accident.
People trusted him.
I'm Dr. Larry Rudolph.
And they knew of him. They knew his face. They knew his commercials.
We'll help you overcome your fears.
Well, if he was in the office, they all felt like they were meeting a celebrity. You know, the man on TV, the dentist on TV.
No sights, no sounds, and no fears.
We had people come into the office and asked about Bianca and asked if she really did pass away, you know, what happened. And we had to say we didn't know.
There was a friend of Bianca who called the FBI and said that she was suspicious that her friend's accidental death was not really accidental.
Lawrence Rudolph made sure Bianca's body was cremated within 3 days.
The friend suggested that there were a number of troubling things. Miss Rudolph was a devout Catholic and had expressed to her explicitly that she would never consider being cremated. There were some certain things that just did not seem to add up.
A well-known local dentist is in jail in Colorado tonight.
FBI agents believe their investigation will prove he killed his wife while on vacation.
This case is about whether Lawrence Rudolph killed his wife with a shotgun, or did his wife accidentally shoot herself while packing the shotgun to leave? Why did he want to kill his wife? There's a financial motive. We're talking about almost $5 million in life insurance proceeds. And he's had a long-term, apparently, affair with the manager of his office.
Was it an accident or did he do this? Nobody knows what happened truly to Bianca, but Dr. Rudolph.
Nearly 2 weeks after Bianca Rudolph's death while on a hunting trip in Zambia, family and friends in Arizona gathered to remember her at her funeral. But at husband Larry Rudolph's Pennsylvania dental practice, there was a hush in the air.
Larry never talked about Bianca's death ever. He was saying to everyone not to talk about it, and it made it sort of suspicious.
Sherry Hauk worked as a dental assistant in Dr. Rudolph's Three Rivers Dental Group for nearly 8 years. The lucrative practice, with 5 offices in the Pittsburgh area, specializes in sedation dentistry, providing anesthesia for fearful patients.
I liked everything about how we treated our patients, and I really believed in everything we did and how he did it.
After years building his successful practice, Dr. Rudolph, says Sherry, was now spending limited time in the office. He and Bianca had lived in homes in both Pittsburgh and Arizona. The couple had met while Larry was in dental school and Bianca was at the University of Pittsburgh.
Larry and Bianca got married in the early 80s, shortly after she graduated from college.
Megan Schiller is a reporter at Pittsburgh's CBS television station KDKA.
They proceeded to have 2 kids. They had Julian, who's their son, who's now an attorney in Florida, and they had a daughter, Anna, who is now following in her father's footsteps.
Anna, a friend of Sherry's, is also a dentist at the practice.
Anna described her mom as like an angel. She loved her mom. People that knew Bianca Rudolph described her as a very kind, caring person.
Sherry never met Bianca, and there may have been a reason why. She says Larry was having an affair with the woman who managed the offices, Lori Milliron.
Larry and Lori's affair just seemed like it was just very open. As far as I know, it was probably going on for 20 years. It was just uncomfortable, and you just didn't talk about it.
In the office, Sherry saw different sides of Larry.
Larry could be very nice, and he could change attitude within a matter of minutes.
That erratic behavior, Sherry says, was one of the reasons she left her job.
He could throw tempers, and we'd sort of just call it like he was going Rudolph.
Something Larry did enjoy talking about in the office and took pride in was his hobby, big game hunting.
Larry Rudolph and Bianca Rudolph were avid hunters. That was a huge part of their life. They were both very well known for it.
Hi, my name is Dr. Larry Rudolph, and it's my privilege to be serving as your president of Safari Club International.
Rudolph served for several years as the president of Safari Club International, a group that promotes hunting.
We are first for hunters, period. First for hunters!
He traveled the world, recording messages for members.
I'm here on the banks of the Kafue River in Zambia. I've been doing some lion hunting and just having a great adventure.
His term, though, would be tainted by claims he damaged the club's reputation through alleged misconduct, including supposed adultery. Larry denied the claims and sued for defamation. The case was ultimately settled, but Larry was ousted as a club member. But his passion for hunting endured, and in 2016, he and Bianca headed to a favorite location, Kafue National Park in Zambia.
Kafue National Park is considered a big game paradise, the oldest and the most prestigious national park in that area of southern Africa. Just to put it in scale, it's the size of New Jersey.
The park has one section that is a protected wildlife sanctuary and an adjacent area referred to as game management that allows hunting. On the trip, the Rudolphs stayed in this 2-room cabin consisting of a bedroom and a bathroom.
Bianca wants to finally hunt a leopard. She'd been trying for years to hunt a leopard.
The trip lasted about 10 days, a time that was happy, according to Spencer Kakoma, the local game scout accompanying the couple.
They were laughing at each other, kissing each other, hugging each other.
Did you think they were a happily married couple?
I was even admiring that because I'm also married.
And did you see any tension between Larry and Bianca Rudolph?
No, I didn't see any tension.
Bianca never did shoot a leopard, and on the final day of the safari, before the Rudolphs went to their cabin, Spencer says, as is daily protocol, the guns were emptied of all ammunition.
And you saw Bianca Rudolph cleaning her gun of
I
live
saw
ammunition?
Bianca Rudolph doing that. It was clean or it was clear. There was no any ammunition which was there.
You saw it with your own eyes?
Yes.
It was the end of the Rudolph Zambian hunting trip. They were supposedly packing up and getting ready to fly home. But then Bianca Rudolph suffered a fatal gunshot wound.
Spencer was working about 30 yards away when he heard the gunshot and ran to the cabin, finding 56-year-old Bianca Rudolph dead on the floor, shot in the heart. The weapon was a 12-gauge shotgun similar to this. Spencer says the gun, partially in a soft-sided case, was next to her, and Larry Rudolph seemed inconsolable, sobbing.
There's a crying, let me just kill myself because my wife, she has committed suicide. She has killed herself. I want to kill myself also.
Spencer says Larry first claimed Bianca died by suicide, shooting herself intentionally while he was in the bathroom. And he says Larry was so distraught that he ran to a nearby river saying he wanted to jump in and kill himself. Spencer says he calmed Larry down and they went back to the cabin. But now, Larry had a different version of events. It was no longer a suicide, but that Bianca accidentally shot herself packing up the gun.
Were you surprised that a shot had gone off?
Yeah, that's one of the things which made me to suspect. I saw Bianca Rudolph removing the ammunition from the organs.
So how do you think ammunition got into the shotgun?
I think there must be just someone who loaded it.
Somebody loaded that gun?
Yes.
Things were not adding up for Spencer. He and Larry Rudolph went to the local police station. Rudolph was interviewed for about 30 minutes by now retired police commander Roston Nyenga, and Larry told him Bianca accidentally shot herself while packing the gun.
He had a gunshot and a scream. Inside, he rushed to the bedroom and then he found the wife lying down in a pool of blood.
Did you believe him?
I believed him because I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
Commander Nyenga sent his investigators to the scene, who told him it matched Dr. Rudolph's description of events. They believe the shotgun, found approximately 3 feet from Bianca's body, was discharged while inside its case and reported that Dr. Rudolph had tried to resuscitate his wife.
It was decided that this was an accident.
Yes, this is the report that we received.
The police report, dated 2 days after Bianca's death, concluded Dr. Lawrence Rudolph rushed to the bedroom only to find his wife lying on the floor bleeding. The findings further suggested the firearm was loaded from the previous hunting activities, causing the firearm to accidentally fire.
This is, to me, a little bit astounding that they would have made that conclusive, declarative statement that this was absolutely an accident so soon after Miss Rudolph died.
Bianca Rudolph's death in Zambia was devastating for her daughter Anna.
Anna always said Bianca was like the best mom and just did everything, was like a very good person and was very wholesome and kind.
Dental assistant Sherry Haupt says Larry Rudolph didn't tell Anna or her brother Julian about their mother's passing for nearly a week. Anna had troubling questions about what had happened.
She had no idea whether her mom got shot in the face or the chest or anywhere. She just would say, I want to know what happened to my mom.
And at the Kafue National Park, there were doubts too, from the moment the gunshot rang out early that October morning.
It's a loud boom.
David Katz is a ballistics expert and former special agent at the Drug Enforcement Agency. We asked him to review documents in this case. He says the blast from the Rudolph's 12-gauge shotgun would have been ferocious.
Bianca Rudolph screamed after the gunshot.
Game scout Spencer Kakoma instantly knew that sound meant trouble.
She didn't scream help, or she screamed, ah! Then that's how we rushed there. Within 15 seconds, we reached there. She was dead already.
From the beginning, Spencer said he had questions about Larry's version of events, including when Larry told him he was in the bath when he heard the gunshot and raced out to find Bianca dead.
But when you saw him, he was fully dressed.
With shoes. It confused me.
15 seconds to be fully clothed with shoes is pretty quick.
Exactly.
But local police say Larry told them he was wrapped in a towel when Spencer arrived. Kafue National Park investigator Masua Musese also had questions about what he saw in the couple's cabin. He says he observed the wound on Bianca's chest, the gun nearby, and wondered how she could have accidentally shot herself in the heart while handling the long-barreled weapon.
What did you think? What was your theory?
To me, I suspected that this to be a foul play, because the way the firearm was lying, the way the deceased was lying, the way the bullet went through, because to me to say that she shot herself, I doubt it.
So, Mr. Musese, did you ever voice your suspicions of foul play to the Zambian police?
I voiced my suspicion to the police.
And what did they say in response?
In response, the Zambia police told me that the police will really investigate up the bottom of the issue.
But did they?
They didn't.
Within days, says reporter Megan Schiller, local officials allowed Bianca's remains to be cremated in Zambia.
Even the paper over there reported what had happened as an accidental shooting, and the comments on social media were people saying that it seems suspicious to them.
One reader suggested, this doesn't sound right. Something fishy here? And it was suspicious to one of Bianca's friends. Certain Bianca was opposed to cremation for religious reasons, the friend made a call about 2 weeks later and set a chain of events in motion.
There was one point when this case became an active international investigation, and that is when Bianca's friend called the attaché of the FBI in South Africa and said that she suspected foul play.
Mary Fulgeniti is a former federal prosecutor and CBS News consultant. She says Bianca's friend told the FBI about Larry's affair, said Larry had been verbally abusive to Bianca, and reported that Larry and Bianca had fights about money.
She opened a Pandora's box as to why Lawrence would want to kill his wife.
Even the consular chief at the U.S. Embassy in Zambia had suspicions. He spoke on the phone with Larry Rudolph just hours after Bianca's death.
The consular chief had a bad feeling, he said, because Lawrence quickly turned it to cremation and getting out of the country, which he thought was highly suspect.
The consular chief was a former Marine with decades of experience with weapons. Unbeknownst to Larry, he decided to inspect Bianca's body before it was cremated. He measured the shotgun wound and took photos.
The consular chief said, based on looking at Bianca's body, he didn't think there was any way that she could have done this to herself, that she could have been leaning on the shotgun. He said it looked like someone was holding the shotgun several feet away and fired it at her.
The consular chief turned his photos and notes over to the FBI. An inquiry into Bianca's death was underway. Retired FBI supervisory special agent and CBS News consultant James Galliano says international investigations take time.
This case is being investigated outside of the United States. It presents a ton of different problems that you have to deal with.
Back home, life went on for Larry. The FBI kept working the case both in the US and in Zambia, and investigators eventually made their way back to game scout Spencer Kakoma.
So 5 years later,
that's when
you heard from the FBI?
Yes, that's when they called me.
Were you surprised?
Yes, I was surprised.
Over the course of 5 years, FBI investigators interviewed numerous people, reviewed documents, photos, and conducted forensic tests, eventually filing a complaint, listing evidence of possible foul play in Bianca Rudolph's death.
The complaint lays out a neat roadmap of a lot of circumstantial evidence that points in the direction of Lawrence Rudolph as the murderer of his wife, Bianca.
Zambia's Kafue National Park. Vast, stunning, serene. But retired police commander Rostin Yeyenga will never forget the day back in 2016 when that gunshot rang out from this cabin, killing Bianca Rudolph.
When your officers went to the scene, what did they see?
Yeah, what they told me was that they found the dead body lying facing upwards.
And years later, he still recalls his conversation with Dr. Rudolph.
He seemed to be sorrowful, you know?
He was very sorrowful?
You know, when you lose your beloved one, you can't be in that mood. I could even see some tears in his eyes.
Yeyenga says the initial investigation was not rushed and says at the time no one told him they suspected Larry had anything to do with his wife's death.
What was the most powerful thing that he said to you that convinced you this man is innocent?
To say he's innocent. That was his story.
You're so easily convinced. I just have to tell you a story and you believe me.
It's coming from your own mouth. I can believe you. Whatever story you tell me, I can believe it.
But could an experienced hunter like Bianca accidentally shoot herself in the heart while placing a long-barreled shotgun into a gun case?
For the shooters out in the audience, everyone's going to understand immediately, there's a visceral feeling, no, don't do it.
Ballistics expert David Katz says if that happened, Bianca would have been pointing the muzzle at herself, ignoring safety protocol.
Whether the gun is loaded or unloaded, if you know your way around guns, you would never under any circumstances point that weapon towards you or another human being.
Katz often works with firearms at the company he owns, Global Security Group. At our request, he reviewed the initial FBI complaint.
The complaint, in fairness to Larry Rudolph, it's just the government's version of events. It's a one-sided document. So I want to be completely fair to Larry Rudolph.
In the complaint, the FBI interviewed a Zambian ballistics expert who performed what's called a drop test to determine if the gun could have accidentally misfired if Bianca dropped it on the ground.
The question is, if you slam the weapon hard enough, if you drop it, if you bang it on the ground, will that weapon discharge?
The Zambian ballistics expert repeatedly dropped the Rudolph's gun, most likely loaded with a dummy round, about 4.5 feet onto cement, and reported the gun did not misfire. The complaint lists some of the other FBI findings, including the results of a series of tests using a 12-gauge shotgun of the same make and model as the gun that killed Bianca, and a soft-sided gun case like the Rudolphs.
They did gun tests. They did a study with people who were about the same height as Bianca and had similar arm lengths.
The FBI performed a reach study, which Katz says would determine if Bianca could have reached the trigger while packing the shotgun into a gun bag. 15 women who were near Bianca's height were tested. None was able to reach the trigger of the shotgun while zipping the case.
This is not a live weapon.
We asked Katz to demonstrate how the test might have been done with the help of this woman who is 5 feet 4.5 inches. Bianca was 5 feet 4 inches.
So I'm going to measure your arm.
FBI analysts used a photo of Bianca to measure her arm length. They estimated Bianca's longest possible right arm length at 28.75 inches.
29 inches. So your reach is slightly longer than the maximum reach as estimated by the FBI.
The gun used in this demonstration is not the same make and model as the Rudolph's gun.
It is not a weapon, it just looks like one.
It's a prop gun, non-functional and not capable of holding a bullet. According to the FBI, the model of gun the Rudolphs had was approximately 31.1875 inches from trigger to muzzle. We attached a wooden dowel to the barrel of the prop gun to make it match that length.
So I'm going to take this weapon, I'm going to point it at your chest right where the wound on the victim was placed. The idea is that somehow the weapon could be discharged accidentally as if it was being pushed into a gun case. So let's bend over, keep going, keep going. If you can touch the ground even with it. Now try to stretch out and touch the trigger. You're not on the trigger, you're close to the trigger. Okay.
Next, Katz added a gun case similar to the one the Rudolphs owned.
All right, let's say you were zipping. Can you reach your hand in and touch the trigger?
The woman in our demonstration was able to reach the trigger.
Just about, just about.
Great difficulty.
Yeah. I guess what I'm left with is this conclusion. Possible. Unlikely, but with sufficient leaning forward. But that would then suggest, without any doubt, a contact shot.
A contact shot is a gunshot wound occurring when the muzzle of the gun is in direct contact with the body at the moment the gun fires.
This is a 12-gauge shotgun shell. It contains pellets of double-aught buckshot.
In a contact shot, there is no time for the pellets to spread. Instead, they go straight into the tissue in one tight group, the same diameter as the gun barrel.
With contact shot, you're going to get this. Further away, you're going to get this. Further away, you're going to get this.
Katz says those photos of Bianca's body taken by the consular chief in Zambia may rule out death by a contact shot.
The most critically important issue in this case is how far from her body was the muzzle of that shotgun when the rounds were fired.
When the consular chief took those photos, he also measured Bianca's shotgun wound and noted the pellets covered approximately 6 centimeters in diameter, roughly 2.5 inches.
That pattern would be impossible if the muzzle had been pressed against the victim's body.
So, from what distance would a weapon have to be fired to cause a 2.5-inch wound? We asked Katz to use this real shotgun to show us how rounds fired from different distances can make different-sized wounds. We didn't have access to key information about Rudolph's gun, but the long barrel of this gun measures the same distance from trigger to muzzle, approximately 31.1875 inches.
Fire!
Katz fired into a block made of ballistic gelatin designed to simulate the effects of bullet wounds in human tissue.
Fire!
When I fired the last round, that was from 10 feet, there are discernible pellet wounds here, here, here. This is why the consular chief was suspicious when he saw the wound, because he saw a wound that was more like this.
FBI investigators also compared shot patterns created by firing from various distances and estimated that Bianca's wound depicted in the photographs was created by a shot from a distance of between 2 and 3.5 feet. The complaint's conclusion: Bianca Rudolph was not killed by an accidental discharge, and it wasn't just ballistics catching the attention of the FBI.
This is a case that's going to be made on the totality of the circumstances.
Anna always said how she wished she had more time with her mom.
Sherry Hauk says Bianca's death continues to haunt the Rudolph's daughter, Anna.
She was devastated that she couldn't even say goodbye to her.
It appears Larry Rudolph wasted no time setting up house with his longtime rumored girlfriend, Lori Milliron, in Paradise Valley.
Within weeks, she had moved into their home in Arizona.
Rudolph's business continued to thrive.
No sights, no sounds, and no fears, only at Three Rivers Dental.
He and Laurie split their time between Pittsburgh, Arizona, and a vacation home in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico.
After a while, I thought, well, if it wasn't an accident, wouldn't he have been arrested by now? Nothing's really happened.
But in December 2021, more than 5 years after Bianca's death, Rudolph's new life with Laurie was about to change. And that FBI complaint would turn out to be the key.
The federal prosecutors and the FBI agents had decided that they had enough information to essentially charge Larry with crimes.
Laurie Milliron's attorney, John Dill, says the pair was at the Cabo home.
They were going down there for vacation and having a return flight. He wasn't fleeing or disappearing or anything like that.
But their holiday came to a sudden and surprising end when local authorities arrested Rudolph.
Laurie's reaction when he was arrested, obviously she was shocked.
Mexican police executed a warrant for Lawrence Rudolph's arrest for the foreign murder of Bianca Rudolph and for mail fraud relating to Rudolph collecting Bianca's life insurance. The FBI said the insurance never should have been paid because it believed Rudolph murdered Bianca.
Larry Rudolph was the beneficiary, and he was the recipient of nearly $5 million of insurance money.
Those millions were spread out over 9 separate policies. One of the insurance companies where Larry mailed a claim is located in Colorado, so that's where the case would be tried.
Bianca died on October 11th, and the first claim was submitted on October 31st.
I'm not sure if there's a time period when there's an accidental death that somebody's supposed to wait so it doesn't look wrong.
In a court filing, the defense claimed there was no financial motive for the alleged crime, asserting that Rudolph's dental practice alone was worth $8 million. What's more, Dill says, the fact that all 9 policies were paid proves Bianca's death was, as Rudolph described, and Zambian officials ruled, an accident.
You'll see insurance companies went through a full investigation, including going to Africa.
But Mary Fulginiti says not so fast. For one thing, the FBI's resources would have allowed for a much more thorough investigation into Bianca's cause of death.
They just have access to more things. They have ballistic experts, access to the counselor chief and other witnesses in Africa that I'm not sure the insurance firm had access to talk to.
Within days of his arrest, Rudolph was extradited to Denver. A grand jury was convened there to hear evidence about his case.
Everyone in Pittsburgh was talking about how this dentist, who was a well-known, respected dentist, could possibly be accused by the FBI.
Sherry says word of Rudolph's arrest hit Anna hard.
She was just devastated. I called to check on her, and she would not talk about her dad being arrested. She just talked to me about anything but that.
Laurie Milliron followed Rudolph to Denver. She was about to become involved in the case as well, by way of a subpoena.
She was called to go before the grand jury, and she was in town for his bond hearing and went and testified.
About 2 weeks after Rudolph's arrest, that grand jury handed down their indictment.
FBI agents believe their investigation will prove he killed his wife while on vacation before allegedly collecting millions in insurance money.
It seemed that the multi-million-dollar windfall of insurance money Rudolph received wasn't the only motive the FBI believes was behind Bianca's murder. In the complaint, it says Laurie Milliron had given Rudolph an ultimatum.
You have 1 year to get rid of the practice and leave your wife.
Dill says there was no ultimatum. That allegation came from a disgruntled employee, according to a defense motion.
All we can just say is that's not what the evidence is going to be.
As for the speed of Bianca's cremation, Rudolph's attorney says that's no attempt at a cover-up, that both he and Bianca had expressed their final wishes.
The defense is going to argue, well, they have a will, and in the will, it was the directive of both parties to be cremated.
As Mary Fulgeniti explained before the trial, murders on foreign soil are difficult to prove, and the length of the investigation might actually be a liability.
What the defense is going to do is try to make it look like this case, which is 5+ years old, has stale testimony, stale witnesses, stale everything.
But it turns out that years after Bianca Rudolph died, there would be something new after all. Another arrest that no one saw coming. The truth about the death of Bianca Rudolph, wife and mother, has remained as elusive as the Zambian leopard she hunted. Her husband stood charged with murder and mail fraud. Then, come February 2022, this case would grow even more complex when Laurie Milliron was charged.
As if the story couldn't get any stranger, now we know that his alleged longtime girlfriend, Laurie Milliron, is now facing federal charges.
7 federal counts, alleging she provided false and misleading testimony to a grand jury sitting in the District of Colorado. Just over a month after that testimony, Laurie Milliron was arrested.
She's accused of lying about her relationship with Larry. She's accused of lying about what Larry said in the days and months following Bianca's sudden death.
I think she was shocked. She did not expect this to happen.
A 64-year-old woman, she faces as much as 30 years in prison for those charges. But her attorney, John Dill, emphasizes
There's no allegations by the government that she was somehow involved or had anything to do with what happened to Bianca Rudolph in 2016.
Dill says that the speculation and the charges against his client are all false.
The truth is, Laurie Milliron is not a criminal. She didn't perjure herself, didn't lie to the grand jury.
But former prosecutor Mary Fulgeniti says there may be another reason the government filed those 7 counts against Laurie Milliron.
They might have also charged her because they would like to put some pressure on her to cooperate.
Pressuring Rudolph's longtime girlfriend to be the star witness against him.
Well, if I was the prosecutor in this case, I would absolutely be hoping that she was going to come forward and possibly cooperate against him. And she's the one witness that could possibly do him in.
Hi, I'm Dr. Larry Rudolph, president of Safari Club International.
Meanwhile, from home detention in Arizona, Laurie Milliron was still connected with Rudolph, running his multi-million-dollar dentistry practice, but forbidden to contact him.
Still attempting to work, yeah, from where she is. It's a lot more difficult, obviously.
The government planned to try them together in the same courtroom, an outcome their lawyers fought against and lost. The two on trial together was a powerful image that could impact Laurie Milliron.
Laurie Milliron does not want to be sitting next to Lawrence Rudolph at trial because he's charged with murder. And she wants nothing to do with that, and she doesn't want any of that prejudice to spill over to her, which will ultimately say, oh, well, she was a part of it. I mean, if she's the lover.
And in a pre-trial affidavit filed by Rudolph's attorneys and signed by Laurie, she wrote that Larry and I were romantically involved, and Mrs. Bianca Rudolph was aware of that. The suggestion: the affair was an open secret, not a motive for murder. But the prosecution would soon test the loyalties of Laurie Milliron and Larry Rudolph.
And see if they stay aligned or if at the end of the day she does ultimately cooperate.
Our defense is basically that what their government is saying, not only can't they prove it, that's not the facts.
Over the years and across an ocean, facts have been hard to come by in this case. Retired FBI Special Agent James Galliano knows time can be a prosecution's toughest challenge.
Memories get rusty and cloudy, documents get lost or destroyed. With every day that passes, it gets more and more difficult to close a loop here, get the evidence you need, and make a conviction.
There's a lot of hurdles that have to be overcome here, so it's by no means an easy prosecution.
7,000 miles and a world away, Bianca Rudolph's death has impacted those who barely knew her. Former police commander Rostin Yayenga still thinks it was all a terrible accident.
There will be no evidence connecting to the murder.
There'll be no evidence connecting Dr. Rudolph to the murder?
I don't think so. From the experience that I had, no.
But one-time scout Spencer Kakoma was so shaken by this experience that he quit his job. He believes that in his beautiful country, as Bianca Rudolph hunted, she became the prey.
Yes, I'm just happy with the American investigation. He wanted to escape, but they have managed to corner him.
Larry Rudolph's legal team provided 48 Hours with the following statement. Dr. Rudolph is innocent. The Zambian authorities who were there and investigated said so. The insurance companies who paid the claim after they investigated said so. Strangely, 5 years later, the feds brought charges without any real evidence, no eyewitnesses, no forensics, no anything, except for some speculation sprinkled into a chasm of conjecture. Anna and Julian have lost their mother. Sources tell us they have expressed support for their father. And next, what really happened in the country Bianca Rudolph cherished would be decided in a Colorado courtroom.
"48 Hours. Don't miss an episode."
I'd like to make a toast to Todd and Barb. Hope to live a long and happy life. Here's to Todd and Barb.
Jessica, oh, big girl.
I always said when I was younger, God, I want to be just like my parents.
There's my son, Jordan. How old are you, Jordan?
I want to be married young and have kids and well off, just totally in love with my partner, just like them.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's my understanding you've reached a verdict. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor.
Did it ever occur to you that your dad would be blamed for the death of your mother?
Mr. Kendhammer, if you'd please rise.
Absolutely not.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Todd A. Kendhammer, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in the information.
Husbands kill their wives all the time. Husbands kill their wives where only they know the motive every day. But it happens all the time.
What is the address of the emergency? I have an emergency.
Todd Kuhnhausen called 911 at 8:06 a.m. on a Friday morning.
There was a car accident? Yes, a pipe or something came through a windshield.
He reported that there was an accident where a truck lost a pipe and it hit his wife and he needed help.
She's got blood coming out of her nose and mouth.
He tried to do CPR while she bled all over.
You're doing great.
I think he was just frantic.
This is the driver. This is Todd.
I gotta see if she's okay.
Well, just wait. Let them do their work, okay?
The only thing he really cared about was what's happening to Barbara and when can I see her?
She don't like to be alone. No, I wanted to go with her. Yeah, they would love me.
The injuries on Barbara
did not occur by a pipe coming through the windshield.
Do you believe that Todd Kuhnhausen murdered his wife?
Yes.
And they exhaustively searched for a motive in this case. No infidelity, no financial trouble, no life insurance, no domestic violence history, no argument history.
Do I know why he did it all? I don't. But I know it didn't happen from a pipe coming off a truck because there was no truck, and none of his story is true.
What are we looking at here?
Here's the area where the pipe went through the windshield. So you can tell standing right next to it, it's pretty easy to take a pipe and hit it just like that. It only makes sense one way, is that he caused her injuries, caused her death, and tried to cover it up.
It was a sensational narrative the way the state wanted to present it. A man kills his wife, stages an accident. The jury was given a very narrow view of what really happened and what the evidence really showed.
What do you want people to know about your father?
That he's not a bad person. He didn't do this, and he deserves to come home.
Do you think that Todd Kuhnhausen got a fair trial?
No, I don't.
All right, Dad, we'll get y'all, don't worry about it.
If this could happen to Todd Kuhnhausen, it could happen to anybody.
Every year, where the Mississippi widens out on its steady journey south, alongside the river town of La Crosse, Wisconsin, bald eagles gather. Lofty symbols of freedom, they soar close to the remote country road where 46-year-old Barbara Kuhnhausen was fatally injured. The circumstances, so unusual, made headlines and sent her husband Todd to prison for life.
I just became fascinated by the story that I saw unfolding here.
I'm looking for the actual exhibit here.
Now, Todd Kuhnhausen's appeals team says his murder conviction is the true injustice that occurred in this controversial case. Do you believe that Todd Kuhnhausen had anything to do with the death of his wife?
No.
This was an accident.
You don't believe there was a murder at all?
Not at all. This is not a murder case. It was because of this man right here, right?
Lawyer Jerry Buting is best known for defending Stephen Avery on Netflix Making a Murderer. And now, along with attorney Kathleen Stilling, who also happens to be his wife, they've taken on Todd's case, which they say should be measured by his marriage to Barbara.
Their relationship was really special. And that was one of the things that really drew me to this case. The idea that out of the blue he would snap and kill his wife and then stage the accident, it just seems so implausible to me.
They insist this isn't a murder mystery. It's an old-fashioned love story that ended in a tragic accident.
I want to talk to you about Barb.
During his trial, Todd told the court that he fell for Barbara at first sight.
Just one of these things where you know immediately that's the girl you want.
Both were just 16. Friends at first, they began dating in 1989. And in August 1991, they sealed the deal.
Good night. Good night.
Soon Jessica and then Jordan came along.
Hi.
Witnesses, they say, to a romance. How would you describe your dad?
Well, Mom always called him a wild hare.
He's always on the go. Always has some new crazy idea.
And she just was all about going with him for anything.
To the kids, it was clear Todd adored Barbara.
He's just always like doting on her with stuff.
Did your parents argue more than any other couple?
Definitely not.
I would say no.
Basically, whatever my mom wanted, my dad gave it to her.
Barbara worked in the cafeteria at the West Salem Middle School. Todd at a factory, making aluminum soda cans. On the side, he flipped houses with Barb.
That was like the biggest out on a whim thing. He's like, let's buy a house and flip it. And we're just like, okay.
For extra income, Todd also worked with glass, replacing people's smashed and broken windshields. They paid their bills and lived comfortably.
They were just in a really good time in their lives because they had their first grandchild and they were well off.
In 2016, Jessica and Jordan threw their parents a surprise 25th anniversary party.
Everything was perfect. It was good.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a month later, September 16, 2016. The Kuhnhausen family was preparing for their annual camping trip. The plan was to leave later that day, after Barb finished work.
I woke up in the morning, Mom and Dad were still home. I heard Mom in the kitchen.
It was early that morning. Jordan, home from college, says he heard the garage door open and his parents' car leave. No arguing, nothing unusual, he says. Just his dad likely driving his mom to work at school.
If he had off, he'd take her to work and he'd go about doing his errand things, and then when he got done, he'd pick her up.
A little after 7:45, the couple stopped at the home of a neighbor. They were looking after her house while she was away and stayed just a few minutes. And then, surprisingly, instead of heading to Barb's school, Todd headed north, away from it. Why he did would become a critical question.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
At 8:05 a.m., a distraught Todd made that call to 911. He said there had been a horrible accident and Barbara was badly hurt.
She's hit in the head and in the throat, I think, in the throat or something.
At the scene, Todd began to tell his version of what happened.
There was a pipe in the ground.
No, come on, that tree, off a truck.
Off a truck?
A truck or a trailer or something.
Barb was rushed to the hospital.
Is she okay?
I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Placed by cops into a squad car, Todd continued with his account.
I thought it was a bird at first, and then at the last minute I seen it that it was a pipe.
Soon, Jessica and Jordan met their father. He seemed devastated, his T-shirt soaked in blood.
He was kind of pale and shaky and panicky and wanted to know how she was doing, like, all the time.
Tell me what he told you about the accident.
They were driving and something came and it hit Mom.
I was like, how did a pipe hit her? He said it came through the windshield and I pulled it out of the windshield.
How did you find out how seriously your mom was really injured?
The neurosurgeons kept coming in and giving us updates, but the way that they're talking, her prognosis was pretty poor.
The start of a family holiday fast turned into an all-night bedside vigil. It wouldn't last long.
It was like 4 or 5 or something, and they actually pronounced her like brain dead.
How did your father deal with that news?
He was just very upset.
As dawn broke over the Mississippi, Barbara Kuhnhausen, wife, mother, grandmother, took her last breath.
She was gone.
The family mourned. They had already made the tough decision to donate Barbara's organs. But things would soon get even tougher. Police were already suspicious of Todd.
Take pictures of Todd, his front, all the blood, his knuckles, everything.
At the scene of the incident, cops had noticed Todd's bloody knuckles, and he had what appeared to be scratch marks on his neck.
The police kept finding one more step and one more step that would disprove his story.
So how big is this pipe, Tim?
53 inches long, and it weighs about 10 pounds.
This thing is heavy. This is the pipe that Todd Kuhnhausen says flew off a truck, smashed into the windshield of the car he was driving, and caused his wife Barbara's death. A story that prosecutor Tim Grinke says is simply preposterous.
Our theory is that he used that himself to put the hole in the windshield. It didn't fly off of a truck going by. Todd said he was traveling north on Highway M.
Grinke says the police became suspicious of Todd when pieces of his story just didn't seem to add up.
Turned right onto Bergen Coulee Road.
Starting with that mysterious truck. This is the description Todd Kuhnhausen gave police.
It was an older, like a bigger flatbed-looking truck, like a pickup truck with a flatbed on it.
What color was the cab?
I don't even remember. It was darker. That's all I know, dark green or dark blue.
So he's going this way, and he claims that a truck carrying a pipe was going this way.
Correct.
Were you ever able to find a truck?
No. Police spent some time looking for the truck and putting out word to the community to ask if anybody saw a truck that day.
Surveillance video from a horse ranch down the road does show what appears to be the Kuhnhausen car pass by at approximately 7:57 a.m. on the day of the incident. But at around the same time, no truck that matched the description Todd gave police was ever seen heading in the opposite direction. And then, 4 days after the incident, medical examiner Dr. Kathleen McCubbin conducted an autopsy on Barbara.
She didn't understand when she first heard a pipe had done it. She had called law enforcement to look at the pipe because she didn't understand how that could be.
Barbara had 3 lacerations on the back of her head.
She said that the injuries to Barb were very inconsistent with a pipe of that size and that weight coming through a windshield.
She concluded that Barb died of blunt trauma injuries of the head and neck with skull fractures, cricoid cartilage fractures, and ultimate brain death. The cricoid is the ring-shaped bony cartilage structure that's located in the lower neck. What do you believe caused the broken cricoid cartilage?
It's consistent with strangulation.
The medical examiner also noted that there were countless other injuries on Barbara that suggested there could have been an earlier struggle. She had scratches on her neck, a broken nose, a laceration on her forehead, and bruising all over her body.
She had some injuries to her fingers.
Do you need any medical attention?
Todd also had injuries to his hands.
He said that came from striking the windshield when he saw something flying at him.
And he had what appeared to be scratches on his neck and chest as well.
He said he got that because he worked with glass. Turns out he doesn't work with glass. He puts in windshields, but he doesn't normally work with glass or broken glass. So those injuries seemed odd. It seemed consistent, like someone who was in a fight, a really bad fight.
Police had also interviewed a construction worker who said he drove by the Kuhnhausen car around 8 a.m., but didn't see any damage to the windshield or any people around.
He saw the car in the ditch and thought maybe somebody had just driven off the road or tried to make a turn and got stuck.
So he didn't see anybody. He didn't see either Todd nor Barbara.
Correct.
Could they have been hidden in the high grass?
Well, that's the only thought, is that he was maybe trying to hold her down and keep her from calling for help.
There were other red flags. On the day of the incident, Barbara was scheduled to work at 8 a.m., but she never called to say she'd be late. She also did not make her daily call to her mom.
It's a woman who's never been late for work, who always calls her mom. When you look at patterns, that's an obvious change of the pattern.
And where were Todd and Barbara driving to that morning? Going in the opposite direction from Barbara's work.
I'm going to put a windshield in a truck for a guy.
This is what Todd Kuhnhausen told investigators on the drive to the hospital.
Is the windshield you're going to replace in somebody's driveway, or?
In his truck, I was going to take it to my house.
Todd told police that on the way to drive Barbara to work, he decided to drive over to pick up a truck that needed a windshield replaced. He said the truck, with keys inside, was in the driveway of a person he knew from work named Justin Heim.
We do that a lot. No, I didn't call him. I was just going to swing over, and if it was there, grab it.
But when the investigators spoke with Justin Heim, he told a very different story.
When the police looked into that, they found Justin Heim never had ordered a windshield from Todd, didn't need a windshield. Todd didn't even know where he lived.
So just 1 week after Barbara's death and just 2 days before her funeral, investigators asked Todd to come down to the police station under the ruse that they had some leads on trucks that may have dropped the pipe that day.
Are you okay if I take a couple? I didn't take the medicine this morning.
Yeah, that's fine.
As investigators began to question him, Todd told them he had not taken his anti-anxiety medication, and he appeared confused and forgetful of details.
I just don't, I remember, and I don't know how. I remember that's where I was, and I don't, the pipe was there.
He was trying to help. Like, he thought they were trying to help him find the cause of the accident.
How did the pipe get through the windshield? Let's start there.
It came off the truck.
But they were closing in on what they believed were Todd's lies.
There's no explanations for it. You can't. The injuries that were on Barb did not occur from that accident, from a pipe going through your windshield.
And then, when police pressed him about where he was actually going that day,
I talked to Justin.
Todd Kuhnhausen changed his story.
He told a story that he wasn't going to Justin Heim's house. It was actually a friend of Justin's.
Police would later find that friend, who told them he also didn't need a windshield and was not expecting Todd the day of the incident.
Isn't it possible he was in shock? Isn't it possible that he just can't remember anything from that time?
Part of it. I could see somebody not remembering a detail or two, not remembering something traumatic, but the things that surround it usually do remember. So things like remembering where you were going.
After 3.5 hours of questioning Todd, investigators let him go home. But they kept building their case.
Do I know exactly blow by blow how it happened? No, I don't. But I know it didn't happen from a pipe coming off a truck.
3 months after Barbara's death, Todd Kuhnhausen was arrested.
We were basically just like, well, how do we get him back out? Because he's not supposed to be in there.
Jessica hoped a jury would believe her father when Todd took the stand to tell his side of the story at his trial.
I think he just looked like somebody who was trying to explain away his lies. What started out looking like a tragic car accident would soon become much more complicated.
In December of 2017, when Todd Kuhnhausen went on trial for his wife Barbara's murder, almost everyone who attended was there to support him. Yet his daughter Jessica feared the worst.
Every day I was in a constant state of anxiety and couldn't eat and couldn't sleep.
The cause of Barbara Kuhnhausen's death was blunt impact injuries of her head and neck.
The state's star witness was medical examiner Dr. Kathleen McCubbin.
I do not believe that these injuries are consistent with the end of a pipe striking the back of the head.
Todd's trial lawyer, Stephen Hurley, didn't call a forensic pathologist of his own to dispute the state's case, but tried to create reasonable doubt during cross-examination.
If her head were moving at the time of the pipe coming through, the pipe had the potential, because it is some 5 feet long, to strike her head in more than one place. Is that correct?
That may be possible, yes.
Attorney Hurley asked McCubbin if Barbara's large water mug could have slammed into her face if she ducked to avoid the pipe and caused some of the injuries.
Yes, it could be. It's a possibility.
But when Hurley questioned Dr. McCubbin, he didn't focus on one of the critical injuries that Barbara suffered, the cricoid fracture, which the prosecution insisted could only have been caused by Todd.
It could have happened in a multitude of ways, but I believe during the fight, her cricoid fracture happens.
This is a view from the inside of the car.
The windshield of the car was as hotly disputed as the medical evidence. The defense's expert, Mark Meshalem, with over 30 years of experience working with glass, believes the evidence supports Todd's story.
By observing the crack branching,
the fracture patterns on the windshield, he said, show 3 different events.
The first one was a hand impact when Mr. Kuhnhausen's fist went into the glass.
The second event was the puncture when the pipe broke through the windshield. And the third, harder to detect, was caused, he said, when Todd removed the pipe from the windshield.
The lines that are highlighted in here
But the state's forensic expert, Nick Stockey, said the impacts didn't occur in the order that Mechelen said they did. D.A. Grinke argues this is more evidence showing that Todd Kuhnhausen intentionally damaged the windshield, and it was not from a pipe falling off a truck.
It couldn't have done what he said it did. The crime lab found that the windshield had 2 strikes on the outside, which is impossible. However the pipe comes, it's not going to hit and then back up and then hit again.
If he wanted to kill Ma, why the hell would he go through all the work and trouble to find a pipe, drive all the way out to the middle of a busy road?
He has like 28 guns in the basement.
More than that.
This one's from their cruise.
Jessica and Jordan don't believe prosecutors ever answered critical questions about what happened.
They never really said how he killed her or what he did to stage everything. If what they're saying is he staged it and killed her at the same time, the time frame doesn't fit up either. You don't have enough time to do all that stuff.
Because that construction worker drove by at 8 a.m. that morning, Todd had just 5 minutes to stage the crime before he called 911 at 8:05.
So in that short period of time, he had the presence of mind to go get the pipe out of the trunk, go around, break it twice, and call 911 and administer CPR.
Yes, you can do a lot of damage in 2 or 3 minutes. So it's more time than people think.
Mr. Hurley, you'll be calling your next witness?
Yes, I'm
Proceed.
Todd Kuhnhausen.
With so much at stake, the defense decided to gamble by putting Todd Kuhnhausen himself on the stand.
Did you ever strike Barbara Kuhnhausen?
No.
Todd tried to explain to the jurors why, during the police interrogation, he told investigators conflicting stories about where he was going that morning.
When I watched that video, it's me in the picture, but it's not me talking. It's not right state of mind talking in that. I wasn't thinking of where I was going or what I was doing. I was thinking of Barb.
Todd seemed to be doing well.
Mr. Grinke, you may begin your cross-examination.
Until he had trouble remembering details about that day.
I don't recall if I said that or not. I don't remember that. I can't recall for sure.
But his most damaging testimony may have been when he changed his story yet again. He told the jury about a third person he was supposedly going to see on the day of the incident, Jared Logan.
And today you say that you were trying to find the house of Mr. Logan.
Correct.
That's another kind of odd statement to make, that that's why you're going that way and why you couldn't have told the police that the first time or the second time or in the year before the trial.
And just like the others Todd said he was going to visit that morning, Logan said he had never arranged for Todd to replace a windshield.
Did you change your story for trial because you knew the police had figured out your lies?
No.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Todd A. Kuhnhausen, guilty of first-degree intentional.
The jury was out just 9 hours before they reached their verdict. 3 months later,
Today is time set for sentencing in this matter.
everyone was back in the courtroom. The conviction had an automatic life sentence, but it was up to the judge to decide if Todd Kuhnhausen would be eligible for parole.
I am here today. I do not stand alone.
Jessica and Jordan were stunned when Jerry Ann Buchner-Wettstein, their mom's cousin, spoke out against Todd and read a letter signed by several other cousins.
I just remember thinking, like, wow.
Barbara found the courage that day to fight back. Therefore, we stand here today united with that same courage, asking you to sentence her killer to the maximum penalty possible.
Jessica says Jerry Ann had been estranged from their mother.
She basically painted this scene that she just feels so bad about my mom and her big blue eyes, even though her eyes are green. My mom hates her.
We reached out to Jerry Ann, and she denies Jessica's claims that she was estranged from Barbara. But her testimony wasn't the only surprise that day. Grinke had some harsh words for the Kendhammer family, who had to sell Todd and Barbara's home and Jessica's house to pay Todd's legal bills.
Pardon my language, but to be perfectly frank, they need to get their head out of their ass. They need to start looking at this in reality.
I don't think you should be able to talk that way in a courtroom. If you can think that to yourself, and that's fine, because I also think you're an ass, but I'm not going to say that out loud.
At least word it different.
Don't you think you might have added to their pain at that sentencing by saying that?
I think I have to try to open their eyes in some way. I think they're giving him false hope, and I think he's dragging them down with him by using all their money to continue in his lies.
The judge ruled Todd Kendhammer would be eligible for parole after 30 years. But Todd's case is far from over.
We, the jury, find the defendant Todd A. Kendhammer guilty.
Todd Kendhammer's verdict was guilty, but Jessica and Jordan are determined to clear his name.
Because he didn't do it. And he doesn't lie, so when he says he didn't do it, we believe him.
That belief is why Barbara and Todd's children brought on Buting and Stilling,
So this is Todd's.
who understand that undoing a murder conviction is an immense challenge.
It's very difficult to reverse a judgment that's become final.
It's kind of like trying to turn an aircraft carrier. It's slow and difficult to do.
The defense could have argued.
Still, they overcame a big first hurdle, getting back in court.
Good morning, Judge.
Morning. Attorneys Jerome Buting and Kathleen Stilling.
Todd Kendhammer was granted an evidentiary hearing. It was a chance to argue that his original defense team had been ineffective and that there was critical new evidence.
So we were grateful that the judge was taking the time to see what we had come up with.
And 4 years after his conviction for the intentional homicide of his wife, Barbara, inmate Kendhammer was back in front of Judge Todd Bierke.
So present is Mr. Kendhammer in custody.
It opened the courthouse doors a crack to the possibility of a new trial.
Is this the most hopeful you have felt, that your dad may have a chance to walk out of prison?
Yeah.
The burden is now on the defense. Jerry Buting starts by calling a forensic pathologist, something Todd's first defense team had elected not to do.
They chose to go a different route, and I think that was a serious mistake that really damaged Todd's ability to defend himself.
But now, Dr. Shaku Tees, who has performed some 6,000 autopsies, would examine Barbara Kendhammer's medical records and autopsy photos.
Did you observe anything on her body that was consistent with Barbara Kendhammer having been beaten with fists?
No.
Or that she was a woman who had been in a fight?
No.
Dr. Tees contradicted the findings of the medical examiner who had performed the autopsy and testified at trial, Dr. McCubbin.
Yes, some of her injuries certainly could be consistent with an assault or beating as well, yes.
Consistent with strangulation?
It could be, yes.
But for Dr. Tees, the stark photos and silent sketches tell a different story.
I don't see any injuries on Barbara that I would say are suggestive or consistent with strangulation.
And Dr. Tees suggests that the injury to Barbara's cricoid could be due to that large travel mug.
So if she had that in her lap when she's moving forward, could that have caused the cricoid fracture?
It could be the mug.
As for the injuries to the back of her head,
if the pipe is coming in, how would she get severe injuries in the back of her head?
Because she ducked, and the pipe came through like that, and and grazed the back of her head.
Barbara Kuhnhausen died as a result of an automobile accident.
And Tease believes some injuries seen in the autopsy came from the final act of Barbara Kuhnhausen's generosity, the harvesting of her donated organs. But D.A. Grinke doesn't buy the theories of Dr. Tease.
I don't put a lot of faith in her testimony.
But when it comes to Todd Kuhnhausen's guilt or innocence, Buting and Stilling say there is more than just physical evidence to consider.
Something very traumatic and attention-grabbing had occurred, which would likely obliterate any short-term memory that Mr. Kuhnhausen would have had.
The defense hired another expert, this time in human memory. Dr. Jeffrey Loftus testified that Todd Kuhnhausen's various stories could be a result of stress from a terrible accident.
Would you say that this was a situation that was ripe for an inaccurate memory?
Yes.
Still, the most controversial aspect of this story is about that pipe that Todd claims crashed through his windshield and killed Barbara. As part of their initial investigation, local authorities had attempted to reconstruct Todd's story of the deadly incident on County Road M. They tested and taped, dropping a similar pipe off a truck to see if it could in fact bounce. The idea, to determine if a pipe might have bounced high enough to hit the windshield of Todd's oncoming car. But Kuhnhausen's lawyers thought the pipe test was inconclusive. They never shared the investigators' video with judge or jury, and neither did the state.
I didn't think we needed it. The defense didn't want it. We just agreed not to use it.
It was only at the new evidentiary hearing that the pipe test was finally presented in court.
The first time the judge ever even heard of those experiments is in our motion.
Buting and Stilling shared the pipe test video with 48 Hours.
What you're showing me is that the state's own experts did an experiment that if in fact the pipe bounced like this, it could have done exactly what Todd said it did.
That's right. Now that one hits on its end, and look how it bounces.
And comes up really high.
It comes up high.
In your minds, those videos show it could have happened.
That's the point, yes.
Which contradicts state investigators who from the beginning had suggested that a pipe slamming through Todd's windshield was next to impossible.
What are the odds that that would happen to a guy that changes windshields? I mean, what do you suppose those odds are? 1 in a trillion, if at all?
Buting and Stilling introduced evidence from across America to prove it's more common than you think.
This one is near Bakersfield, California, a pipe that looks remarkably similar that went right through this person's vehicle. Here's another one. This one's Houston. Okay.
And it goes right through and hits
would have killed a passenger.
And it turns out you don't have to be an expert to find a piece of pipe along a country road.
And there's another pipe on the road up the ways that someone found.
There was a pipe, and when was that pipe found?
Shortly after.
And it was very similar to the one that went through the windshield?
Same diameter, same material.
What do you think happened?
I believe the pipe came through and hit Mom.
That belief in their father would not waver. Still, how could the experts at trial see a case so differently? We decided to ask another forensic pathologist to take a fresh look at the evidence.
The more I looked at it, the more I understood why it's so complicated. If it didn't happen the way Todd says it happened, then how did it happen?
Dr. Lindsay Thomas is a forensic pathologist who has performed about 5,000 autopsies.
This is the kind of case where it isn't that clear-cut.
48 Hours asked her to review the medical evidence in this case, including Dr. McCubbin's autopsy report.
The original autopsy was very well done, and the conclusions that they reached were very reasonable.
Still, Dr. Thomas says she wouldn't have reached some of the same conclusions.
And that's what makes this case so challenging.
The most troubling injury for her is that cricoid fracture on Barbara's neck. She agrees with Dr. Tees, the forensic pathologist who testified for the defense in the evidentiary hearing, and does not believe that Barbara was strangled.
I've never seen a fractured cricoid in strangulation. I wouldn't say it absolutely can't happen, but certainly I haven't seen it, I haven't read about it, I haven't heard about it. It seems more consistent with the kind of thing that would happen in a weird car crash.
And she believes the injuries to the back of Barbara's head were too severe to have been caused by Todd's fists, but says Barbara could have been hit with a heavy object, like her mug.
Yeah, it would have to be a pretty substantial coffee cup, but I understand there was a pretty substantial coffee cup in the car.
Ultimately, Dr. Thomas can't say for sure how Barbara sustained her injuries.
Based on just the medical evidence alone, it wouldn't be one where you could definitely say, oh, this is clearly a homicide or clearly an accident.
The idea that a man is sitting in prison, does that concern you?
Well, it always does when you have a case like this that isn't clear-cut. You just worry a little that the evidence was given too much weight one way or the other, or the jury wasn't given all of the relevant materials.
Had you ever served on a murder trial before as a jury member?
No, never.
Tim Brennan, the jury foreman, says he found Dr. McCubbin's testimony very convincing. We shared with him some of the new information from the evidentiary hearing, including Dr. T's conclusions.
If you had heard a medical examiner disagree with Dr. McCubbin, would that have made a difference?
Without hearing the full extent of that, it's hard to say.
Still, he stands by the jury verdict.
When Todd Kuhnhausen gave his testimony, he just came across as a person with a lot of falsehoods.
When you say falsehoods, did you feel he was lying?
Definitely. I'm very confident that we got it right.
As the Kuhnhausen family awaits the judge's ruling, Todd is serving his life sentence more than 2 hours away from his kids.
What do you miss the most about your mom and having your dad around?
I used to be annoyed that he would call me all the time and like always come over, but I kind of miss it now. I just miss having them around all the time.
And Jessica's daughter, Carlin, is growing up without her grandparents.
Their dream was always to do stuff with their grandkids, so it's just really hard to not have him with her.
Now Jessica and Jordan, and all those who believe in Todd Kuhnhausen, continue to wait, hoping he gets another shot at what they believe is justice.
Do you think your dad will be coming home?
Yes. We aren't going to stop until he can be home.
Prosecutor Grinke believes justice has already been served for Barbara Kuhnhausen.
Do you have any concerns at all that you might have convicted an innocent man?
Not in this case, no.
"48 hours to miss it would be a crime."
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?